Guys, now let's talk about difference in glycolysis process in different tissues. I mean, the variation in glycolysis process, or at least how the glycolysis process takes place in different tissues. Of course, you know that our body, especially we are talking about mammals, we are quite complicated animals, and we have partitioning of the whole body, and there are different tissues, there are different cellular environment, and of course the different metabolic pathways which are occurring in this, they will be also, they may vary a bit depending upon what are the needs of specific regions of the body. So glycolysis breakdown, of course, give rise to glucose breakdown, of course, give rise to the formation of ATP. You know this? It's a universal process. It's a major essential process, indispensable for the survival of living organisms. Rate and regulation, as I have already mentioned, will depend in which cell or of what tissue type you are talking about. It will vary. Of course, let's start with the brain, most complex organ we have, and most extensively used organ also. Most of the metabolic energy which is produced from different pathways, it is invested in the activity of the brain. Brain also depend heavily on glucose for its energy product, for the production of energy which is needed for the maintenance of its activities. There is synaptic transmission, there is nerve impulses, there are redox homeostasis, and so on and so forth, which is taking place in the brain, and you need energy for that, and glucose is used for that. Of course, the glycolysis here will be aerobic glycolysis, because you will need a lot of ATP, and this is the aerobic glycolysis which gives you a lot of ATP and also pave the way for the TCA, that is tricarboxylic acid. Then, of course, the organ of the organs, the most metabolically active organ is our liver. Liver plays a very important role in the maintenance of the glucose level in the blood. You all know about it. It stores excess glucose as glycogen, because whenever you will need glucose, the glycogen can be broken down through the process of glycogenolysis. And of course, glucose is used by liver also for the production of ATP. So we will later on also discuss a little bit about that, how any imbalance in the glucose metabolism can lead to lots of diseases which are related with the disorders of the liver. Then glycolysis in red blood cells is a little bit, I mean, there is real variation here, because you know red blood cells don't have mitochondria, so there will be no aerobic glycolysis there. All the glycolysis which will take place in red blood cells, that will be anaerobic. And because of this anaerobic conversion, what will happen? Of course, you will get little bit less or much less ATP as compared to the ATP being produced in the brain. But at the same time, the main function of the red blood cells is to just carry oxygen from one part to the other. So in this way, it helps, this transportation of oxygen is made possible because of this anaerobic glycolysis. And then, of course, the most, what we say, the indispensable organ for us, the heart, it beats all the time, throughout your life, thousands of times, it beats. And of course, when it's beating, it needs energy. It means that it needs continuous energy. Although, in contrast to brain which needs energy from what we say glucose breakdown, here the energy coming from fats. But again, the fats also at the end of the day, somehow what happens that they also become part of carbohydrate metabolism in TCA, which you will learn in detail. Also, sometimes it happens that the heart also needs glycolysis for its maintenance. It gets the energy from glycolysis. It happens when you have you face what we say a lesser oxygen. You are facing the lack of oxygen, and at that point the heart really need glycolysis for ATP production, because aerobic pathway like TCA is not available there, or is not that successfully can be used there. इसीलिए हम देखते हैं कि sometimes it happens that people who have a weaker heart, what happens then, that they have lot of lactic acid production. Why? Because the heart is needing more and more glycolysis here, and giving which gives rise to the production of more and more lactic acid. So excessive presence of lactic acid in your blood is one of the indicators कि आपका हार्ट इतना मजबूत नहीं रहा, क्योंकि हार्ट को ऑक्सीजन की कमी बार मिल रही है एक तरफ, और दूसरी तरफ फिर हार्ट की पंपिंग सही नहीं हो रही और ऑक्सीजन पूरे जिस्म में नहीं पहुंच. Of course, then skeletal muscles, they also need energy all the time. They need energy, and this energy is coming from the fatty acid metabolism, but this is also coming from the glycolysis. And also very important thing you should keep in mind, that when you run a lot, you do a lot of exercises, it would happen that you will face the lack of oxygen, and at that time the glycolysis will be anaerobic glycolysis, which will give rise to the production of more and more lactic acid, जिसकी वजह से आपको क्रैम्प पड़ जाते हैं जब आप बहुत ज़्यादा एक्सरसाइज करते हैं. तो ये भी इस तरह आप देखें कि किस तरह ग्लाइकोलिसिस का प्रोसेस मॉडिफाई हो रहा है डिफरेंट कंडीशंस में. And of course, the muscles also use the glycogen breakdown, I mean glucose which is coming out of the breakdown of glycogen. In cancer tissues, बड़ी important बात, बड़ी interesting चीज़ है कि cancer tissues are proliferating with a high rate, the cells in those tissues, but at the same time they are not using the aerobic what we say pathways like a TCA. They are using anaerobic glycolysis. Even in the presence of oxygen, still they use anaerobic glycolysis, और इस चीज़ को हम वारबर्ग इफेक्ट के नाम से कहते हैं, क्योंकि इसमें क्या होता है कि still there is oxygen, but you are producing more lactic acid, you are using more and more glycolysis. Why? Because cancer cells need energy which is readily available, because glycolysis doesn't take much time. There is no need for electron transportation chain, there is no need for the shuttling of the all proteins inside and outside of the mitochondria, and as a result of this what will happen कि आपको बड़ी जल्दी से ही ग्लाइकोलिसिस एनर्जी मिल जाएगी. इसलिए कैंसर टिश्यूज को और क्या चाहिए? इन दिस वे दे ऑक्यूपाई द नॉर्मल एनवायरनमेंट इन विच दे आर, which is around them, and they, as an alien, they occupy that.